Exile building best characters depend on the current meta, budget, and whether you want fast map clearing or high boss damage. Character creation involves selecting your game lead, choosing a fixed appearance, lore-locked class that dictates your starting spot on the massive passive skill tree, and entering a unique name. There are no physical sliders like face or body customization because your base class only dictates your starting attributes and location on the massive passive skill tree. Any class can use any weapon or skill. Your true power comes from your chosen Ascendancy subclass, and specific build Path of Exile is still completely worth playing. Even with Path of Exile 2 available, the original PoE functions as a massive, feature-complete, fast-paced action RPG with a decade of polished content, a thriving player base, and ongoing league support. Path of Exile is popular because of its massive passive skill tree, deep item customization, and frequent seasonal updates. It stands out through an ethical free-to-play model and a passionate development team. I think a lot of new players misunderstand why so many recommend following a build guide. It's not because they want you to copy a build, but because it's the most efficient way to learn the game so that you can eventually make your own build decisions. PoE is a very complex game, and for anything complex, it's usually a best idea to rely on previous people's work instead of trying to figure out everything yourself from scratch. If you want to learn physics, you are not going to start by climbing a tree and dropping apples to figure out how gravity works. You're better off reading a textbook to learn what other people have discovered. In PoE, you're not going to figure out how to make your own endgame builds from scratch without learning from other people's work, unless you want to spend many thousands of hours trial and erroring. At least that is true, you want to make endgame viable builds. If you only care about finishing the campaign, you can do basically anything you want. You can learn things by yourself, but it does require a lot from you. The wikis and various sites in PoE are tools to learn how to put together a coherent build, depending on your need. However, doing this way will take a lot of time and asking around. I mean a lot. I was trying to play this way for a month, and I felt not going anywhere at some point. I was out of my depth. Do yourself a favor and follow guides initially. After that, it is up to you if you want to learn enough to try builds from scratch. You can still check if your Fire Berserker idea works with tools. However, you need to know how much is a decent defense and damage. You need to know what are the usable uniques, mods, and interactions. How feasible is to put the gear together, and what type of content the build is for, if not a generalist. As you can see, you need to know how to use third-party tools first and have basic knowledge of mechanics, interactions, and long lists of mods and items. That's a lot to take on. You can have your first build and fuck around with it blind, but the next one just use a guide or have a veteran player guides you. You can absolutely reach the end of the campaign with basically anything you want. I once got my wife to play the game, and she refused to listen to any advice or look at a guide, built a Caustic Arrow Deidai so off-meta that there wasn't a single guide for it in the last couple years, and stomped the last boss. Endgame is a different story. Lots of knowledge is required to make it to the final tier of the endgame and beat uber bosses. In that world, it's a lot more like cooking something delicious. If you don't want to follow a recipe, you need a very good understanding of how flavors work together to make everything work out personally. If I were you, I'd follow that Fire Berserker idea until it stops working. When it does, I'd use that to learn more and more about build crafting, maybe respec, and then keep going until I can crush the endgame you absolutely need to learn how stuff works. There are tons of things I didn't know until I looked at what others are building, and started asking questions why.